Welcome back to the Fear and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies, and just a little bit of beer.
So kill the lights, grab a cold one, and join us as we dive into this mad world we love.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
And I'm Jamie.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You miss me.
Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
And as a reminder to all listening, if you want to help us to continue growing as a podcast, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whichever streaming platform you use.
To stay up to date with us and all of our episodes, be sure to follow all of our socials. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fear and Beer Pod.
Feel free to reach out to us. We love to interact with you all.
Well, I just got one thing to say. And that's all. That's how we have to start this episode. We got it. The best not kept secret of all time. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire coming to both coasts, Halloween Horror Nights, Orlando and Hollywood. So we'll talk about that. Of course, we made a post earlier this morning saying we'll talk about our top 5 houses. And then an hour later, we got the news. We sort of thought we were going to have something to talk about, but honestly, this rumor season, the spec season, whatever you want to call it, once all the originals came out, I sort of stopped paying attention to all of that, like the forums and all that. I just haven't been diving into stuff as much because I think we know what we're getting. So I just don't need to play around and waste hours of my day scrolling through random messages to see when stuff might be coming. So it was kind of a nice little surprise. We sort of thought, with last week being Epic's announcement, this week would kind of be a empty week, so they can kind of slide a HHN announcement in there for us, and they did. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to play a little bit of catch up because we haven't talked since the last speculation map has come out from Horror Night Nightmare. Sorry. So we're going to discuss that. I don't think there was any changes on houses. So we're really just going to talk about the scare zones and the little icons that they gave us this time. So a couple things to talk about. And then next week, barring any last minute house announcements, we will be talking about our top 5 houses of all time. And maybe we'll split it up a little bit. Maybe we'll do originals IPs. We'll see what we're going to do on that. But let's talk about Ghostbusters and Frozen Empire and the spec map tonight. And then we'll get moving into this season. We're getting closer and closer. So obviously I already cracked my beer. Whoops. But I'm rocking these Shipyard Pumpkinheads still. When I went out and bought 3 or 4 packs of them, I really didn't do too much damage on them. I've kind of been savoring them. So there's still a couple sitting back. So I'm just going to tap into that again. I don't feel like going out and buying a bunch more beer while I have some perfectly delicious beer sitting in the fridge. So that's what I'm working with tonight.
And I'm unfortunately lacking on the other half of our podcast name and not drinking tonight because I am on it's a lot for me, as Nick knows, some of you may not, I'm on a 5-day work week this week. So been putting in the hours. So can't be drinking tonight with work tomorrow, like a real adult. For once.
Shame. A true shame. Yep. So it's me and Jamie rocking tonight. So let's get into this because we are coming hot off the heels of you sort of watching for the first time and me sort of rewatching. But we just got, if you're trying to get your HHN research in, Frozen Empire, I think it's on sale right now. I got it for $10. I use Fandango or Voodoo, whichever name they go by, but you can purchase it for $10. So we bought it. We were watching it. And I guess from what you saw, initial thoughts.
From what I saw, I enjoyed it. I know I'm not the biggest fan of Ghostbusters in itself, but I do feel like they did have a lot of little Easter eggs and a lot of little nods to the original movie. And the second one, I think, even though I haven't seen it, there was one part that I meant to ask you about. But all in all, I feel like it was cute. I don't want to say, obviously it's not scary. It's not going to be the scary house. It's going to be more of the nostalgia house. But initial first watching, I found it very hard to picture them using this as a house for horror nights. I feel like there wasn't really many parts that stood out to me specifically that I was like, oh, I can see that being in the house. I think the only part was the like their laboratory, like their monster where they keep all the monsters and stuff like that. or like the testing lab or whatever. I could see that in there being kind of sort of like cabin in the woods feely, something like that. But um I'm interested to see what they'll do with the monsters as well, because a lot of them are like pretty like big to scale, even like the first like sea serpent kind of monster that they showed in the first part of the movie. So I think that'll be fun. But overall, I think the look of it, I think it'll be really cool. I love that New York aspect style, the Frozen. I think will look really fun. I think they'll do a lot of like room temperature play, which will be nice. So overall, I think it'll be pretty cool. I wasn't as excited for Ghostbusters in itself, but it'll still be something fun to do.
Yeah, I think this movie definitely got a worse rap than it deserves.
It wasn't
I
bad from what I saw.
Yeah, I enjoy it. There's faults with it, obviously. I really enjoyed Afterlife. I thought that was a very well done homage, and then it was kind of like, do we need another one? I guess so, because it is the franchise era, and that's what we're doing. My biggest problems with the movie was that there was just too much going on. There was just too many characters. You have all the OG Ghostbusters, you have the new Ghostbusters, you have these new side characters like the fire starter, and then Patton Oswalt was thrown in there as well. And there's like 12 to 15 quote unquote main cast members, and that's just a lot for any movie, really. So that kind of hurt it, but there's fun jokes. It's still Ghostbusters. It just kind of, I don't want to say it's like a great movie, but it's a fun movie. It's not a bad movie by any means. It's just sort of stuck in between. It doesn't know what it wants to be. It's not fully a comedy. It's not fully family friendly because there's some scares. I think this is the scariest Ghostbusters movie they've ever made, because they're really not scary. Maybe the original was scary to you as a kid because you saw it, way before you should have. But if you saw Frozen Empire at that same age, I think it would be equally as scary.
Mhm.
So
That's a good point.
it's good. I don't hate it, but again, like you mentioned, even when I kind of do this weird thing. Anytime I watch a horror movie now, it's like, could this work at HHN? And you're like, kind of the gears are turning. And I never thought that for this movie. I was never like, yes, this makes perfect sense. This would make a high. It was never on my radar. So when it started first popping up in spec season, I was like, I don't know. Like, if it is, like, I mean, I believed the people that were talking about it. I just didn't want to believe that this was the property they were going to choose, because, like I said, I don't hate the movie. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll do a deep dive on the movie once we get closer towards the season. But it just never screamed haunted attraction to me.
Mhm.
There's just
I
a lot
agree.
of scenes that are hard to emulate. So we'll see.
And sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, you go ahead, because I was going to read something after.
I was just gonna say, kind of going off that too, and I feel like the movie in itself was very detailed with like the settings and some of the set design and stuff like that. And I feel like, obviously, I know Horror Nights could always pull it off with the houses and stuff like that, but I am interested to see what scenes that they do pick, because I feel like a lot of it would be like very intricate, like detail work too.
Hmm. Yeah. So there was a article from Deadline that was sort of paired up with this release, and I think it tells us a little bit more than what the actual description given by Horror Nights gives. So I'm just going to read a little bit of their article and we'll have a better idea of what we're going to be looking at. So the Ghostbusters themed haunted house promises iconic ghosts out to slime mere mortals, plus additional creatures and characters from the beloved classic series. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire will transport fans to New York City, where the Spengler family teams up with the original Ghostbusters, who are now the helm of a top research lab. The discovery of an old relic sets free the vengeful spirit of Garaka, who threatens to freeze everyone to death. Ghostbusters, new and old, must join forces to protect their city and save the world from a second ice age. Guests can venture through Ray's Oculate Bookshop, the Ghostbusters' new high-tech lab and containment facility, and the dank New York City sewer system. So we get a couple settings in there. That's for, I don't know if they're referencing primarily Hollywood, but I would assume that they're going to have similar feels. So I can see all of that. I can see Ray's Occult Bookshop being in there. You mentioned the high-tech lab. That's probably going to be a big spot. I'd be very surprised to leave out the firehouse. So I'd assume
Yeah.
that we're going to get some stuff in the firehouse. The New York City sewer system's a little bit funky because we don't really spend time there in the movie. But, there's a lot we can kind of dissect once we deep dive into this for a future episode into the movie itself. But yeah, there was a couple scenes that definitely stuck out to me initially. And one of the ones that I really think would be cool is just the opening scene where it's that flashback to like 1904. And it shows us like the adventurers meeting and everyone's all frozen. And that's when we kind of first meet this idea of Caracas and being scared to death or chilled to death or however they would phrase it.
I really like the little possessor guy too. Is that what you
Yeah,
called
the
him? That's what his
little,
name
he's like
was.
a little beam of light and he just possesses
I think
whatever item he lands on.
I think that's really fun too. I think it'll be cool. Honestly, I was kind of like downing on Ghostbusters, I feel like, when we heard the rumors about it and stuff like that, and then pretty much had it confirmed with the Spec Max symbol being the same. But I think this will be a fun house, you know?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like you said, it's not going to be, I think it'll be scarier than the first Ghostbusters house because it's just that one.
I think so too.
Like I said, this one I do believe is the scariest Ghostbusters movie that they made. You know, the villain, Caracas, really cool character design. One of the parts again that hurt the movie for me is it's that character's like not in it a crazy amount. It's really the end, and that's it. That you see Caracas in full form doing the final battle, and then like that's kind of it. But interesting to see these characters and who they're going to pull because, like we said, there's a lot of them. So like, is it even worthwhile having a fire starter guy character in there? You know, do you do every single old Ghostbusters? Do you bring out everybody? It's tough to kind of cast this house, and if you're doing it that way, I can't imagine having multiples of people. You know, if we're doing Ray's a cult shop, I'm sure we're going to get Ray, but then like, do you throw podcast in there? Phoebe's obviously going to be in there.
Is
Finn
podcast
Wolfhard's
from a
character.
different one? From a different Ghostbusters?
So podcast and I believe the girl's name is Lucky.
Lucky?
Were
Mm-hmm.
both from Afterlife.
Maybe I just haven't seen Afterlife in a while and I don't really remember it. I got to rewatch that one too, honestly.
Yeah, it's again another fault of the movie that really kind of irritated me is it's very convenient. Well, like these characters shouldn't all be in New York, because not the first one, but Afterlife was not in New York. It was over in the farmland area, I think California or something like that. But now, like Podcast, a little side character who's probably 15, is in New York by himself, like just supposedly at a summer camp or something like that. But he just happens to be in New York. And then Lucky went from working at a fast food joint to interning with Ernie Hudson's character at the new high-tech facility. So it's just like, they shouldn't be there. You could have easily just not had them there. Like
it's very random.
Kill off characters, but you just don't have to have them in this sequel. So I don't know. It's just a very convenient movie, I'd say, but lots of good parts too. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest definitely watching it before we go to Horror Nights. And it may be just to get a better frame of reference. Watch Afterlife if you missed that one as well, because that one is just I thought was a perfect swan song to the whole old school Ghostbusters. You can kind of usher in the new age and do that. I don't think they needed to necessarily tie in the Ghostbusters of old back into this movie. I think that was more of a money grab, being like, hey, these guys.
There they are.
Bill Murray, he's still here. He's up to his shenanigans again.
Who you gonna call?
Pinkman. But it's worth a watch for sure. I'm very interested to see how they pull it off. I do like the fact that we're very clearly getting a cold house. You always need something like that. I've talked at this point for years about how I'm an absolute sucker for those temperature houses, Krampus, Dead Man, stuff like that, where it just playing with senses other than just sight and sound for me is so important in these houses. That's why Sif is always warranted. That's why those little spray actions of water cannons, look at Unmasked last year when you walk in and it's not only do you hear the lightning and the thunder, see the lightning and see the thunder, but yet you feel the rain and the mist coming down too. And it's like, okay, that's how you get fully immersed into these things. And I'm hoping that's what they accomplish with this one.
And we'll probably get some marshmallow scents too throughout the house, which will be nice.
Yeah, we'll get those little guys back. And again, like you said, like everything you've seen from Ghostbusters for the most part is in this movie.
It
You know,
is.
you have the Stay Puft Man, you have Slimer back, you have
Mhm.
everybody for the
Muncher?
most
Yeah.
part.
Mhm.
Yeah, Muncher was
Or was he the
from
blue one from
Afterlife.
the
He was the
Oh,
blue
okay,
one.
that's what he was. Yeah, he
So
was
I
cool
didn't see
too.
him, but he was cool.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the debate is settled. We don't have to argue about Ghostbusters 1 and 2 versus Afterlife and Frozen Empire anymore. The
Yes.
dust has settled.
Mhm. Oh,
So,
before we move on to the scare zones, did you want to mention that the merch came out? What did you think about the merch for it?
yeah, I was going to say, let's talk about the merch a little bit because
Mhm.
I got to pull up some pictures of it, but I didn't hate it. I probably won't be getting it.
No.
I I do I don't hate it. The thing that I don't like is that I think I saw somebody post this. I think Hunter mentioned this
Mhm.
somewhere online that it's just annoying that with these dual coast announcements, the merch is sort of being shared as well because those aren't our archways. Those are
I
Hollywood's
was
archways.
I was just gonna say that too.
So that's sort of annoying that they like
Mhm.
went that route. So, but other than that, I like the design. You got Garakis right there on the top. You
Mhm.
have the Ghostbusters in the big jackets, which will probably be annoying for them. But if they keep that house at temperature, probably is going to be helpful. But I like that. I mean, it definitely tells us we are going into the temperature. They're not shying away from that. That should be a big focus. And that's what I'm assuming based off of the merch. But yeah, so we got the t shirt with the four Ghostbusters facing towards the archway, which is completely frozen over and ice spikes popping up. And at top, you have Caracas with its eyes. You have Slimer in the corner, and then you have other little ghosts and ghoulies popping out of the swirl. But they put that out on a shirt. They put it out on a hat, and I think they got little Stay Puft Marshmallow Men out there as well, and little cups as
They're so
well. So
cute. See,
maybe pick up one of those.
I'm more of a novelty person. I would probably get the plush.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a while since I've felt the urge to buy an IP based shirt.
Me too.
I can't necessarily remember the last one I've purchased. I don't know. I really just they don't scream to me. You know, A Quiet Place was very meh. This one, again, being a property I'm not like absolutely over the moon about, is like okay. Like it's a cool design. I it's fine. But for me, I have no reason to purchase it, that's for sure. Same with the hat. Like I'm not gonna wear a friggin' hat with Caracas on it. I'm not that big of a nerd.
Ghostbusters nerd.
Just kidding. If you go buy one, you're not a nerd, but
No.
it just looks a little funky. I don't know. It just seemed like it was the easy way out. That's kind of what I've gotten as the impression from all the IP merch is sort of just like
Very simple.
taking the easy way out. Like you're just throwing up the logo, or I feel like you could have done a little something more with it, especially the archways. The fact that they took that route and just chose to do just ones and print them as such is kind of
Mhm.
meh. I feel like if somebody was really in love with this Ghostbusters Frozen Empire movie and they were in love with HHN and you had Hollywood's archways and you had Orlando's archways, it would sort of be like you got to get both kind of thing.
Mhm.
And they might seek it out a little bit more. Now, if it was our archways, I still don't think I'd purchase it. So like no harm, no foul. But yeah, I don't know. That's my thoughts on the merch. What did you think on this?
I think compared to it's kind of tough too because compared to the merch that they had for Ghostbusters when we previously had it, I feel like it was super cool. So I feel like since we kind of had that 80s theme that year, I feel like they kind of played off that too. And since it was the original, I really like that one a lot more. But same thing you said, I think the last time I bought, excuse me, an IP shirt was probably for Beetlejuice when they had Beetlejuice, that kind of acid wash one that I had gotten. I think that was the last IP I had bought, and IP shirt I bought. And I really don't buy the shirts too often. I know none of us really do, unless it's the year shirts, and I know you like the Scare Zone ones. But
Yeah.
I think it is a cool design. I did notice right away that it was the Arches for Hollywood, and I thought that was kind of weird. I thought, yeah, like you said, like they couldn't just switch it out and put ours in there too, real quick.
Yeah.
Keep the same design and just do a little switcheroo.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
I was saying it couldn't have been that hard. You know,
Yeah.
I know you're going to double your cost of printing because it's two different images, but like
Because at first I was thinking, I was like, maybe they wanted to look more like a classic, like older, like Universal, like style setting, like for the arches. But I was like, yeah, that's definitely not ours. I was like, see, it's like this
No,
looks real familiar, but
these
yeah,
are
but
not your
overall,
arches.
yeah, overall, I think it is pretty cool. Personally, not just something for me. Like you said, maybe I'll get the little Stay Puff plush. He's really cute. But the only thing I look forward to really with the Horror Nights merch, either way, is the little studio screamers. So you best believe when those come out, I'll be getting some of those.
Yeah, those
Mhm.
and you always have to have the house shirt. With
I
all the
do.
houses on there.
You get the house shirts more than I do. I do like sometimes they have cool house shirts. Like I think the one last year was the glow in the dark one for the
Mhm.
Odd Fellows. Yeah.
Yeah, I like all
Mhm.
those, and that's like a good keepsake for the year. I do
Mhm.
wish I purchased more of them when I was going earlier in my
Mhm.
years because I think I missed like 25 and maybe 27 or something like that. But I have all
Mhm.
the other ones, and I'll probably have to retcon and find the other older ones somewhere online because I'm sure they're floating around on
Mhm.
eBay or something. But yeah, so
Mhm.
that's I guess our thoughts on Ghostbusters Frozen Empire until we do a full deep
Mhm.
dive, and we'll get Seamus's input next week on that. So let's
Yes.
dive into the Horror Night Nightmares speculation map 3.5. This is our first time getting all scare zones put on there. And it's not names, it's all speculation still at this point. It's pretty early
Mhm.
for speculation for scare zones still, because at this point in a normal year, we're talking having 3 houses announced at this point, maybe,
Mhm.
versus
Probably.
8. Yeah, we have 8 announced so far, so we just have 2 more
Yeah.
have to go.
That's
So
crazy.
all yeah, we're flying along in the spec season. So let's just start up front. So up front is this little circular image with another little what looks like a outline of a peanut inside the
Mhm.
circle. Now since it's been released, we've sort of seen online and detected that this is pretty much the same image as the little eyeball in that archway creature that they've had in the teasers that they've self dubbed as Otis. That's what the Horror Nights Twitter has called it. But that
That's what the kids are calling it.
that's what the kid or people or whoever is running the Twitter account for Horror Nights is referring to that person or creature as such. So I think this is nothing more than what we've seen in the past, where it's going to be a here's what's at the event kind of thing. A couple characters thrown in from all the zones, and it would be cool if maybe they recreated that archway in a lower scale kind of thing. Sort of how we have those um, the old school Halloween Horror Night logo. I can't think of the word right now, but the arch. It's not the
The
archway, but
the marquee?
mm,
No.
no, but the big metal thing that we walk under with the old school
The
lighting
medallion?
of Halloween Horrors. No, 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 no. It's inside the park. I don't know. Words escaping me, but it has what the flames were coming off of it last year. It was at the front of the park the last 2 years, but I think if they can create something on that scale with whether they do it with putty or anything like that, and make it real gross and creepy looking, and put the Otis eye in there, you can make the eye maybe like automatic, so it just kind of moves around and shifts and looks at people as they come in. Be pretty cool and
Mhm.
creepy, but uh, it's such a weird creature. Like it's just an archway, so I don't know how you can't play that off as like a character that's walking around, and it would be silly to have it at such a small scale. Like if you imagined it the size of Oddfellows little like caravan thing, like that would just look a little
Mhm.
silly, like being off to the side behind there. But I don't know. What did you think anything else of this zone?
No, now that you said that, I would have never in a million years guessed this is what it is because I was just staring at it and I was like, the same thing. I was like, it looks like an infinity symbol or maybe a peanut or like a button. I was thinking a button maybe, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm onto something here. But I was kind of worried that this would be more of like one of those, not like Shipyard 52 per se, but kind of like you said, one of those compilation scare zones for maybe what we're going to have in store. But I don't know. It's tough because maybe this is the route they wanted to go with for the commercials and stuff like that. Maybe this will actually be more of an official scare zone for something. this year, so we'll see. I'm intrigued by this one because this was kind of the only one on the map that didn't really have an actual like picture to kind of go off of. It didn't really ring any bells when I saw it.
Yeah, I really think we're just in store for another here's what's at the event ahead of you kind of thing. Kind of like how we've had pretty much every year now. It seems like, the only one that was a little bit different, last year's was a little bit different, but it really was Oddfellow kind of saying whatever, and there was characters from the other zones in that zone. And then, I mean, even the previous years, the last one that I could think of that was like original would be like an arcade that was completely different. But other than that, was it 28? You just had like the different TVs out there, and all the TVs had the different like IPs that were going to be there. Like you had a Stranger Things on the TV, and you had like a bicycle and stuff like that. It was kind of just like a preview.
My memory is so terrible. This sounds familiar.
But it was just sort of a preview of what is at the event. So that's what I kind of think this is leaning towards, I would assume. So,
right.
Let's make our way up to New York, where the image is looks like a little skull with a bike helmet on. And the skull is similar to something we saw on the first spec map, where it's not just like a human skull. Clearly, it looks like it has the fangs. So that's leading me to believe vampires, which is leading me back to last year at Vamp 69. I'm thinking we're going to potentially, if this is what it is, maybe have the Blood Slayers have their own zone. Just full on bikers, biker vampires. So tease you. So that excites you. So why don't you take this, and then I'll give you my piece a little bit after. So I'm curious what you think about it. We haven't talked about these really, so.
I was going to say we haven't talked about these very much, but it does excite me. I think you had mentioned this to me the other day. You were like, wasn't that like the same symbol for Vamp and da-da-da-da? But I don't want to say it's too soon, because it's not an exact like playoff off the scare zone, but more so something that was in the scare zone or characters that were in the zone in itself. But I'm afraid that with having it in such a big section like New York, it's in New York, right? I just lost my train of thought for a second. Yeah, I was going to say, with having the scare zone in such a big section for New York, it would make sense if it would be motorcycles and stuff like that, because they would have a lot of space. But then again, how much could you really have to play off just with those characters? Like, what would the setting actually be? That's the only thing that gets me.
Yeah, it's kind of my thing too, because when I think of bikers, I think of like biker bars and like garages and stuff like that. And you can't really turn that big of a scare zone into like a bar area, I guess. I don't know. It seems a little weird. I don't know if you could fill the whole thing with that. I don't love the fact that it's some of the same characters in the same zone 1 year later. It's a little much.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe it's not leaning towards that, but then I'm also worried that it might go down how the chainsaws went. Like, I hope it's not like going to be a big chainsaw scare zone, but with the vampire motorcycle gang and riding around, and that's all it is. I feel like it would add more to it,
Oh, if they did like a little gang war thing and did like the Blood Slayers versus the Dirt Devils, or the Devil Dogs, not the Dirt Devil Dogs.
The Dirt Devils, the
Dirt Devils. Devil Dogs are the candy, right?
The Dirt Devils is the vacuum cleaning company.
Oh, the Dirt Devil, yeah. The Devil Dogs. That's for the bikers from Slaughter Cinema.
Yeah.
Dogs. So if they had like biker werewolves versus biker vampires, at least that's like a little something
that would be cool.
Extra.
You might be onto something.
It gives you a little bit more variety, I guess. But again, that's like a big. I would have stuck, if we have a biker zone, I'd put it in like San Fran, where you could like just kind of use some of the environment you have. You could use the stage as like almost like the bar from Roadhouse that's like caged up, and you can have them throwing bottles and stuff.
That would be cool.
But thank you. But that is the only thing I can really get from that image in that zone. I mean, if they made like some big Evil Knievel ramp or something, it'd be kind of interesting.
That's what I was thinking. If they maybe do like a little show out of it, kind of how they did with Zombieland when they had it, with a little stage show and something like that. Or, I mean, this is just with the biker helmets and the fangs. It's just really leaning towards Lost Boys for me. I know it's never going to happen, but I mean, come on, you guys are just really teasing me here. I would take it to the
Not as a
Scare Zone
scare
horror
zone.
house. I know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough sell for me. I don't downplay. I trust Horror Nights, but I'm kind of hoping that that's not the sole basis of this zone, because I think that's
Mhm.
just a lot of groundwork, and especially with the motorcycles too. It's like you can't be driving them around. You can't be
No.
riding them in that zone. So it really inhabits what or it limits what you can do with there. It's unlike last year where you would just hear the sounds of the motorcycles revving and stuff like that. I think they were
Mhm.
fan favorites for sure, but
Mhm.
and even if they do like little side bar setups, that's kind of exactly like how Vamp was.
Yeah.
You know,
And I
it's
feel like it
just
would just be a lot of open space. And I really like that zone too, which I wouldn't want it to not be utilized to its full potential.
Mhm.
Mhm. Or I
Yeah,
like
they
that
definitely
location for the zone.
yeah, they've done really well there before, but I feel
Mhm.
like for that zone to be an actual winner, you need that big almost stage show aspect to it, right? With Vamp, we had a great little show where they would just kind of up and down and rotate and stuff like that. Even when you had Seek and Destroy, we had that whole controller area. Zombieland, like you mentioned, had those. When you had Vamp 85, you had the
It,
zone with you had the
the
little disco
stage.
ball falling down the stage show and stuff like that. So I don't know what sort of show you would do with motorcycle vampires. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but
Mhm.
it's a tough task.
Mhm.
So, any other thoughts on that New York zone before we move along?
I think we're good to go.
All right, so let's move over to San Francisco, where the image is a little teddy bear and ABC blocks.
Hmm.
So, a couple interesting things that I pulled up. So, there was a scare zone last year in Hollywood, and it was also there in 2012, just called Toys with a Z,
Mhm.
because Hollywood is funny and they put Z's on stuff that should have S's. They are
They do like
hilarious.
Z's.
They are so funny. But the description of the zone from last year was a maniacal toy maker is using dark magic to bring evil toys to life, including a porcelain doll, teddy bear, nutcracker, and ballerina. Now, these devilish dolls, also spelled with a Z, are after you and your friends. So that's one train of thought there. The other train of thought is something similar but different, but this was actually a house at HHN Orlando at 6, so back in 96, called Toy Hell Nightmare in the Scream Factory. And that was one of 3 houses there. So this was you explore an abandoned toy factory and quickly learn the ancient, terrifying secrets held within. The toys are alive and in no mood for company. So again, at the end of the day, it's evil toys coming to life. Obviously, with the house, you can put it into a better atmosphere, being that you're in the factory. You can't really do that outside. But toys, haunted toys, does this excite you?
I
This is
love it.
interesting. It's very
This
different.
is different. I really like it. And I have watched the walkthrough of this scare zone in Hollywood when they had it previously, and it is super cool. And I immediately thought of it when I saw this icon on the map, and I was hoping that it would be it. But it was kind of veering me the other way because I think it's very interesting that we would be taking two things from Hollywood if it ends up being the toys scare zone that we would be borrowing. And it would be interesting that we have monstrous, excuse me, plus that. So that's the only kind of thing that was really pushing me away from hoping that it would be.
Mhm. And potentially 3 things if we get one of those houses, because
Yeah, true. Yeah.
one of the last 2 houses to be announced, one
Mhm.
was, I believe, a scare zone from Hollywood a few
Mhm.
years back, Scream Queens. So yeah, I think it's a really fun scare zone idea. It's something different. I think you can make it work in San Francisco because you don't need a giant thing. I honestly think you could expand this and put this in New York and put the bikers in San Francisco, and I think you might be better suited for that. We've had toy things in the past. You know, we've had the little robot guy walking around in the Sweets scare
Mhm.
zone. I know he wasn't a toy, it's more of a Halloween costume, but nonetheless, it's equivalent to the same. So I do think whether anybody's going to confirm this or not, I do think the borrowing of Hollywood and borrowing of from yourself in the past. We're seeing some repeat stuff here and there. I do think that this is coming down from the fact that maybe we don't blow our budget on Halloween Horror Nights before Epic opens. Maybe we shave a little bit here and there. We save and we reuse some things to the best of our abilities while still making original content. And this is kind of in that world too, because I think a lot of these costumes and stuff in these scare zones is going to be repurposed stuff, which, typically it happens. We don't notice it as much, but it happens more often than you think. But this year it seems to be a little bit more abundant. And we know that Horror Nights saves a lot of their stuff. They have warehouses full of props that they keep and they hold on to just in case, if there's a sequel, if they want to redo something, or they want to just repurpose something. You can only make stuff so different, but if you take a piece from here, a piece from here, a piece from here, and then boom, you got something new. I get why they do it.
Yeah,
so
it makes sense.
Being that we're probably shipping stuff over from Hollywood for Monstros, I wouldn't have been surprised if they're like, hey, what else you got? Yeah, throw some of that in there and then we'll
Right.
borrow.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's exciting. I hope that this scare zone can sort of redeem itself after Shipyard 32, because that was sort of a little bit of a flop.
She will, don't worry.
Yeah. Conjure the Dark, though, I thought was done really well. It's just
Mhm.
tough. That's a very tricky zone. You have to really play to what you're given there, which is limited space. And, you just need to be able to create that big pathway. Conjure the Dark, I felt did a pretty good job by pushing that stage back. It almost created more space, it felt like, versus Shipyard. Instead of that stage, it had the crane and it really limited your pathway. And there really wasn't much to check out there. You never found yourself being like, I want to go watch this little wolf guy like press a button and howl and then like run around and scurry amongst the tooth fairies that I saw 2 years ago. So that's all I have for toys. Interesting, but it's a pretty vague thing, so I'm interested. Let's move now to Central Park, where it looks to be a sombrero. I also thought it was a UFO at one point because it's just a weird little image.
Same shape.
Yeah, same, but different. But yeah, we'll go with sombrero. So there's a couple different things. Again, this is another thing that I pulled from Hollywood. And this was at Hollywood in 2023. And this wasn't a scare zone or a house, but it was the Dia de los Muertos Plaza. And it was sort of what I saw as like a dine-in experience. But they had the whole plaza decorated with, skeleton people, sugar skulls, paper flags, flowers, stuff like that. It was very Day of the Dead style, but it was sort of a dine-in. The costumes were really cool. But again, I my mind went to Hollywood because I was like, well, if they're shipping more stuff, just add it to the list. Just throw it in
Load
there.
it up.
Yep. We also could go back to HHN 20 to the scare zone, Esqueleto Muerte, which is the skeleton death. And that was a fun little looking scare zone. The caption of it is just revel in the seductive taunts of death as you wind through a glowing skeletal nightmare. So it's very fun. I think if you were to do something like this, another character that it wasn't completely Mexican, but the face paint reminded me of this was in the Graveyard Deadly Unrest. There was that one character with the black light face, the makeup.
One of my faves, when they would light it up, and the makeup would be all lit up. Super cool.
So that stuff sort of, I think, lends itself well to Central Park because you can control the light. So if you want to do a lot of black light imagery, that's the place to do it. You can load that place up. You can line it with the black lights and really
be super cool.
Control it. So it makes sense. I the one thing that I like so far about these scare zones compared to last year is they're all vastly different. Now they were different last year as well, but they had the tie-in, which didn't really tie in completely. So like if you can't nail it 100%, don't try to do it and then tell me that it's tied in together because it's not really. But I do like doing this. We've talked in the past about wanting to see, we've done episodes where it's like, oh, scare zones we want to see as houses. This kind of was always on the list with Esqueleto Muerta. Like I'd like to see that really colorful, festive Day of the Dead style thing. And I think this is a perfect spot for it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
You literally took the words right out of my mouth. I could either see them going the route of doing very neon and like vibrant colors and stuff like that, like you were saying with the black lights and maybe the face paint and whatnot, or I could see them going like classic Dia de los Muertos with the different, kind of like in Chupacabras, how they had the different colored flags hanging up and you could have those hanging from the trees with the different colored lights and stuff like that. I just think this would be such a fun scare zone. Like you've mentioned, we've always talked about seeing something like this before, or we would like to in a scare zone. So I think this could possibly, and I'm saying this as we only got the first speculation for scare zones, this could possibly be my favorite one. But I think if it's going the route that I think it is, I think this will be really cool.
Well, it seems like this is like your year for scare zones.
That's what I'm saying. They're really hyping me up here. It's great.
But it also is interesting too because it ties right into the food booth that they had there last year. Because that's where they had that Mexican sugar skull style place with the walking tacos and all that.
Because they have the La Bamba right there though too.
Yep. So I'd be willing to bet they would re-put that there again. We'd have the same little bar set up and go there. So I like it. You could do again a little showy style thing at the front, like we had Jungle of Doom. You could do some sort of, I don't want to say seance, but you can have some sort of like spiritual dance or something like that. I'll have to rewatch Coco to get some ideas for this zone. But yeah, I'm interested. I like it. It's something different, something I haven't seen myself. So I'm all for it. Now let's move to the last scare zone down in Hollywood, which is actually has a film reel. So it indicates that it's an IP zone.
Yes.
So something we haven't really seen in a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 years, I'd say. I can't, off the top of my head, I don't have the scares. Oh, Crypt TV was probably the last one at 30.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's been a little bit. And this is a little house symbol. I think we're in agreement that this is probably Blumhouse.
It's definitely Blumhouse.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So now the question is, what properties? What are you thinking and what do you want? What characters?
Well, let me actually bring him out right now. If they don't bring this guy back right here, if you're not watching on YouTube, it's my grabber plush that Nick got me from the new Bloody Disgusting Horror section at Walmart. But I would really like to see the Black Phone come back since they want to be reusing stuff this year. I mean, it'd be perfect. They probably have the costumes and everything's still there. You could have the van set up in the scare zone with the grabber and the balloons. I think it would be, if we do get another IP announced that is in relation to Blumhouse, don't think they would probably use this in the scare zone as well. So it is tough to think what they would use in a scare zone because, like, I mean, the movies I like with Blumhouse, I would like to see the Black Phone. I would like to see Sinister. I feel like some of those things would be kind of hard to do in a scare zone unless they're doing more of like a Blumhouse kind of like best of, just like with a character compilation of the different characters walking around. Because you could do the grabber, Bagul, you could have the Megan, you could do the I haven't seen it from Happy Death Day. The
baby. Yep.
Baby face killer, stuff like that. So interested to see what route they'll go with this. If it's going to be more of a compilation thing or if they're going to focus only on a couple different movies and have more like set design set up out. So really excited for this one though, because I do like Blumhouse.
Yeah, I do think it's compilation style. So I think Grabber will be there. I'm not sure if the Megans will be there because they have them as the dance thing. So like maybe you only have them there and not in the zone. So that way it's not too much of the same. I do think the baby from Happy Death Day makes sense. I was thinking maybe Freaky. You could have the Catherine Newton style girl with the red jacket and the knife. Purge. You can have all the Purge characters back. You could have the Lady Liberty mask. You could have the guys in the suits, you guys with the masks from the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, these are all kind of reused things. I'd really like to see the Totally Killer with the big fake cool. Like yellow hair mask.
Yeah.
And Five Nights at Freddy's
or Five Nights at I mean,
everyone wants to say no, it's not coming, but shit, if you're doing a Blumhouse compilation,
I feel like they wouldn't put the characters out in a scare zone. I feel like the costumes would be too big, too heavy, a little bit too hot. I feel like it would be a lot of extra work on our scare actors. But
Definitely
I
would
mean,
be.
you could.
I mean, if we're talking Blumhouse, we can't just skip over it like it's nothing.
Oh, no, definitely not. And I didn't even want to mention it because I didn't want to get my hopes up, but I would hope they would do something with Five Nights at Freddy's with how big of a hit it was with the other movie coming out that was recently announced, the second one. I just don't see why they wouldn't. Other than what I
Yeah.
said, the logistic wise, just with the costuming and stuff like that. But it would make sense. It would definitely get the crowd draw.
Yeah, it would definitely be easier, I think, in a house because you can trade them in and out pretty quick.
Exactly.
As far as a scare zone, people walking around with it, I don't know how mobile you'd make them, but it's doable. I mean, look at the Disney characters, right? But they don't really move. But
That's true.
Just maybe you
bring Bagul so I
put
can
'em-
take a picture with him in the scare zone.
I mean, if you put them on the stage, think of like Graveyard, Deadly Unrest again, when you had those big winged characters up on
Oh,
the
that's true.
stage. It was all they did, and they weren't walking around because their costumes were huge. They have these big old wings on them. They did their little sets. They tagged in, they tagged out. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility.
I feel like I wouldn't want to see it like that though. Like I wouldn't want to just see them like stagnant characters. You know what I mean? I'd rather have them like interacting in a house. Which
What
I shouldn't.
what
I
if they
shouldn't be
made
picky. I shouldn't be picky.
what if they just made them as animatronics and just had them out there like standing and dancing like they would be at the actual Five Nights at Freddy's restaurant?
That'd be sick. If they had like a Five Nights at Freddy's like stage show in the scare zone, so it was just like the stage with the
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a show, but they can just be up there like moving around and that's
No,
it.
that's what I mean. Exactly, like on one stage kind of thing. I think that'd
Mhm.
be super cool with like Bonnie and Freddie and Foxy. That would be, yeah, that would be great. If they go the compilation route, I think that would be an easy thing to do, especially just having like a little boop stage right there.
And you can just have people stand in front of it and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's a very expensive prop, but
That's my only thing. And with
doable.
the,
It's doable, but
yeah,
who
it's true.
knows?
Mhm.
I'd be very interested to see if that comes because if they're doing a whole Blumhouse thing, it's a little crazy to dismiss. I know it wasn't well received, but it is probably one of the more popular of the items.
Yeah. I doubt they would do the only other like more recent Blumhouse movies that I feel like for sure they wouldn't be would be Night Swim and Imaginary. I still haven't seen Imaginary, but
It's
I don't
fine,
know
but
if that
again,
would.
that's a big character, the Chauncey Bear. That's big.
Chauncey.
The obviously Insidious is a rumored house at this point, so I
Mhm.
don't think we'd see any characters from Insidious in there.
No.
Sinister, I don't think you'd get Bagul. I don't know, maybe.
I know, I
Maybe. It's a pretty
know.
easy character, right? Just long black hair and like a trench coat, I guess.
He literally wears like he literally
He has
wears
like
he
a
has
little
long black
mask
hair
thing.
and like kind of like a suit in his face. His mouth is kind of like gone. It's just like black and black. Yeah, he's so cool. He's just creepy. I feel like it would add to the spookiness of the scare zone with some of the other. I don't want to say they're like funnier characters, but I feel like Blumhouse loves to do the comedy horror sometimes with ones I
Oh, they
don't like
definitely
as
do.
much, like
Yeah.
Happy Death Day and Freaky, and yeah.
No, they definitely have gone
Mhm.
the unserious route of horror movies, which works out for
Mhm.
them because they make them for cheap and they make a bunch of
It
money.
does. It does.
So those are all the rumored scare zones from
Mhm.
the Spec Map 3.5 from Horror Night Nightmares. So overall, what do you think of the scare zones?
I'm much more pleased with what they were from last year. Even still, they're rumors. This is the first time we're seeing the scare zones pop up on the spec map. Compared to last year's spec map when we first got the scare zones presented on there, I think this excites me much more than what it did, other than Vamp, of course. But this is looking very cool. And like you said, very different, which is nice.
If there's one that drops off, what do you think that one would be?
The one in, I keep wanting to say San Francisco. I'm sorry, New York. The vampire
The
skull
the
one.
biker
Yeah.
thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be my guess as well too. I
Mhm.
think that one would
Really?
probably be the one to drop off. But yeah, because
Yeah.
I think the toys is basic and easy enough. I
I think
think
so too.
the
And I think San
sombrero
Francisco is
works.
perfect for it, that little area.
Yeah, I think Blumhouse has. If you're mentioning IPs for a scare zone, I think that would be a lock. And I
Yeah.
think the front Otis one that makes sense. It's an archway and it's
They
kind of
have
its
to
own
use
deal.
that for something since they've been having it in all the commercials.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
announcements and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is what we're going to talk about tonight. Like I said, we're going to do
Mhm.
our top 5 next week with Seamus unless another announcement of some sort comes. So
Mhm.
before we sign off,
Mhm.
do we want to talk about any movie that you've seen recently for a horror movie of the week? I'm trying to think myself of what I've watched.
Did we watch anything recently? I don't think I've watched anything too recent of the horror genre. Like I said, we've been actually working, been busy to watch movies.
Yeah, and all I watched in particular was Frozen
Well,
Empire.
Ghostbusters today, yeah. Mhm.
So we just talked about that. We talked
Mhm.
about last week. We talked a little bit about In Violent Nature. We went
Ah,
out and saw
yeah,
that in theaters,
yeah. Mhm.
which we'll probably discuss if we ever get Shutter Sundays back up and running.
I know. We
We
need to
got
get
a
back
lot
on
of
that
stuff
soon.
going on
We got a
outside of
lot of
this
stuff.
one podcast. So
Yeah,
we'll get to it at some point. We will get
at
back
some
to it at
point.
some point.
Mhm.
But I think that about wraps us up for this week.
Mhm.
You know, this off season has been coming at us hot and heavy. So we never really know what is around the corner next week. There could be another announcement. There could be absolute static. We only have 2 more houses to announce anyways. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of the timeline. I think at this point, if we get I think if we hold off 2 weeks, we can get an announcement early to mid July. We can get our last announcement at the end of July, hold off, and then you could drop all the scare zones let's say August 8th, middle of August, and then
Mhm.
we're in the home stretch at that point. So that about sums us up for this week. Anything else before we shoot on out of here?
All I could say is I can't believe how fast Horror Nights is creeping up on us. Like we're
We're
already about to
we're
be
closing in.
a couple days from July, and then we'll be able to say Horror Nights is next month. It's just crazy to me. And thanks everyone for still listening along, even though some of the episodes we don't really. Nick is the genius, the madman behind all of our ideas, so you guys could thank him for us always having some fun stuff to talk about, even
Look
if
like a
it's not
madman tonight. My hair is absolutely insane.
mine
I
too.
look
If you,
like Kramer.
yeah, I was gonna say mine's not looking too hot either. So we do it for you guys.
All right. Well, until next time, this is Nick.
This is Jamie.
Happy haunts.
It's cursed. Cursed. It's got a death curse.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare. And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook,